One thing that's like brought up often is how like black suburban girls from two-parent households have like a phase where they go through like a hood phase. Not them being hood, but dating hood. And as a black suburban girl myself, I went through that phase as well. It was just one person. And we talk about that, that canon event that's very common. But what we don't talk about is why these people, the black suburban girl and like the hood guy, why they're not compatible. Like, for obvious reasons, it's like, you're living this lifestyle and I'm living this one, and I'm not going to go to jail. Like, going to jail for me is not an option, but going to jail for this person may be like, it's casual for them. That's not, going to jail is not casual in any way for me. So those are the obvious things. But like, one thing we're going to talk about is like the relationship and why, like, get deep down into why it doesn't work. And the biggest thing about why it doesn't work is because of romantic expectations and what those two people's norms are. Suburban black girl norms are going to be very different from hood man norms, and I'm talking about from like just many ways of thinking, just like very subtle things outside of the obvious things, right? Treatment, or in this case, mistreatment. I remember one day I was like, I'm not dealing with this. Like, and so I broke up with him. And he was like, you're not dealing with this. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I didn't even do nothing. He was like, I just cussed at you. And I'm like, my dad don't cuss at my mama. My daddy wouldn't cuss at my mama. And he's like, that's little. Like, that's not a big deal. Like, I still love you. And I was just like, and that's like what I mean by like just like casual things where it was just like, this is a mismatch, obviously, because oftentimes when we'd argue or have like disagreements, he was always like, well, my mom did this. Like, my mom did this. And it's like, well, I don't want to live a lifestyle like your mom. So just because I would always tell him, I'm like, just because your mother dealt with this and she put up with this does not mean that I have to sit here and be okay with it. I'm not okay with this. So if your mom was okay with that and that's what she accepted, that's on her. But just because you watched her tolerate that and accept that does not mean that that has to be my reality, and it's not going to be my reality. And that is where we did not see eye to eye at. And I remember like one time I told him, I was like, I don't think we're compatible because I feel like you were raised on survival. Like, I feel like the way that you describe your childhood and like your early adult years, like you were constantly trying to survive. And I was like, I was raised on pure love. Like, I was a planned pregnancy, and at no moment in my childhood, in my adulthood, did I ever question my parents or even my family members' love for me. And that wasn't the same for him. And even though that's not his fault, it created a significant divide in how we operated in life. I was raised on love, so my outlook on life was just like flowers and rainbows, and I just had a positive outlook on life. Whereas like with him, everything was negative because he was always in survival mode. Like, things that I was like, hey, you don't have to do all that. Like, this guy's just being nice. Like, because it's like a restaurant worker or something. He's like, no, that's like too friendly. Nah, he's trying to be sneaky. And it's like something that I perceived as someone just being like nice and polite, because that was my reality of everybody around me just being nice and polite. He took it as like, no, this person being nice and polite to get something out of you. Like, they are trying to scam you. And I'm just like, we're at Nick and Sam's. Like, it's a steakhouse. Like, I don't think the waiter's trying to get over on us. Just like, that's what I mean by very, very different outlooks on life and things like that. We don't really talk about on like why those aesthetics don't work out. Another difference in being raised on survival versus being raised out of love was into my adulthood. I'm 30 now, and like, my parents still help out, not because they need to or I need it. It's just like, I'll just check my bank account and my parents would have just deposited money. I have a full-time job. Like, they would just deposit random money in my account, and like, my parents would still do things for me. And like, I remember it was a huge argument because he was like, you don't ever ask me for anything. You don't ever ask me for help or anything, because my mind was, if I need help or I'm in a bind, like, I have two parents that I can call and they will be there in 10 minutes or whatever. And so what I noticed in the relationship was he started to resent how much help I had, even though I didn't have to ask my parents for help or I didn't need the help from my parents, how available my parents were to be with me. And then just how much my parents liked me as a person became like a huge issue. And I just remember he would make unnecessary comments. Like he'd be like, well, I have to go to work because I don't have a mom and a dad that are going to just pay my way and let me do anything. And it's like, where did that come from? like, where are we beefed out? Like, it would be unnecessary because it's like, well, I worked a full-time job. I had two jobs at the time. So it was just, I had two jobs and I was in school. So I would just be like, where is this coming from? Like, I'm not going to stop my parents for helping. And I'm also not going to be shamed because I have parents that are willing to help versus like his family that maybe wasn't able to help or for whatever reason they didn't help. And it's just like, that's not my fault. And I'm not going to sit there and cut off my help because you don't have any on your side or feel bad about the help that I'm getting. And I say all this to say, like, if you're a black suburban girl and you haven't had your hood phase yet and you can prevent it, skip it altogether. There are zero rewards for you. Whether you realize that short term or long term, you will be put through a